What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? How Jake McCarthy has turned himself into the best player in baseball in the second half of the season. And now that the D-backs rotation is healthy, let's power rank the best rotations in the National League.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas, multimedia journalist and a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonmlb and use code all lowercase lockedonmlb for a first deposit match up to $100. On today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, we'll be talking about Jake McCarthy and him turning into the best player in baseball in the second half of the season. And now that the D-backs rotation is healthy, I want to talk about the scariest rotations among NL contenders that the D-backs could face in the postseason. We'll do a little power ranking. So a whole lot I want to talk to you guys about today. Thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. And actually, we just hit 1,200 subscribers, so let me just do a quick shout out. Thank you to everyone. And also, we hit 1,000 followers on the Locked on Diamondbacks Twitter main show account. So let me also say thank you for that. The love, the support has been so great. So please, please, please continue to follow me on all social platforms. And the link to all those is always in the description of the podcast. But now let's get into the podcast and talk about that Game 2 victory over the Colorado Rockies, because like we discussed after game number 1, the D-backs are inevitable, and they proved it once again. We talked about game 1, about how it was like, it felt like it could have been a offensive clunker for the D-backs, right? Every now and then, the D-backs have been playing so well, but every now and then you just have a bad offensive game. They've had so many injuries recently. Moreno, Walker, Ketel Marte, Lourdes Gurriel's in and out. Like, the D-backs lineup has been so hampered with injuries recently. So after, watching game number 1 against the Colorado Rockies, if the D-backs had a clunker and lost, you would have been disappointed, but you've been like, okay, they were probably due for a loss. But instead, they make a rally, as they always do. The answerbacks woke up, they responded, and stole game number 1. Game number 2 against the Rockies felt more of the same. Again, the offense was struggling. The team was only 2 for 9 runners at scoring position, wasting opportunities. Really couldn't get a lot going against this Colorado Rockies pitching staff, who, again, isn't good, but they looked good last night until the 9th inning, is because the D-backs are a super clutch team, and only being down 1 run, there was a level of confidence you had in your D-backs, right? Entering that 9th inning, despite watching the whole game of the D-backs doing nothing, even going to the 9th, you're like, these are the Arizona Diamondbacks. We know about their perseverance. We know about their ability to bounce back and make a comeback at any time. So even though the D-backs went through 8 innings of an offensive no-show, we still had faith in a belief that the D-backs were probably going to come back in that 9th inning. As I always say, if the D-backs are down in a game, go pound the D-backs money line to make a comeback. And that's what they did last night. Bases loaded, 2 outs, down a run. Who comes strutting up to the plate? Of course, none other than the hottest player in baseball right now, Jake the Rake McCarthy. He is every D-backs fan's favorite player right now. He gets the loudest applause, loudest reaction when he goes up to the plate. He's been on fire in the second half of the season, and he continued it last night. No worries. The most confident I've ever been in a guy going to hit a walk-off hit, because once you saw his bases loaded with 2 outs and you saw Jake McCarthy was the one coming up to the plate, I was like, D-backs are going to win this game. At the very least, we're going to extra innings. There was no doubt in my mind Jake McCarthy was going to do something positive to prolong the game. That's how locked in he's been. That's how hot he's been. He's come through every single time with runners in scoring position over the last week and a half, and he did it again last night. He now has 15 RBIs in his last 6 games. I think there's only one other D-back in franchise history with that many RBIs in a 6-game span. Like what Jake McCarthy is doing right now for the D-backs in Major League Baseball is actually quite historic. And he's all of a sudden, is he coming on the heels of Ketel Marte for who should be the D-backs MVP? Because Jake McCarthy just delivering big hit after big hit night after night. And considering how many guys are down in the lineup right now, like Jake McCarthy is number 2 in the power rankings for most important D-backs right now after Ketel Marte. He's been so critical for the D-backs the first half of the season, really stepping up his play with the outfield struggling. And now with so many injuries to the lineup in the second half of the season, Jake McCarthy has decided to turn into the best player in baseball. And it's not even a hyperbole. When you actually look at the numbers, Jake McCarthy has the highest batting average in baseball in the second half of the season, 405. He is 30 for 74 in the second half of the season, 3 home runs, 19 RBIs. He's been absolutely incredible. And if you look at the numbers on the year for Jake McCarthy, runners in scoring position, 388 average, 1127 OPS. High leverage moments, 342 average, 961 OPS. This guy's absolutely clutch. And one of my favorite stats when looking at the Jake McCarthy splits, when Jake McCarthy has 2 strikes, he is still batting 285 this season. Think about that. 2 strikes and McCarthy does not matter. He's still coming through and producing at a high level. He's been so good for the D-backs this year. When there's 2 outs, he is also batting 295 with a 848 OPS. Jake McCarthy has been nasty this season for the D-backs. And it's not something that, maybe expected entering the year, because this was a guy who was potentially the odd man out when looking at the outfield. We were like, Lourdes Gurriel, we just re-signed him. He's, of course, getting the starting left field spot. Corbin Carroll, best player in baseball, we thought, entering the season, amongst D-backs fans at least. He's got center. Then in right field, Corbin Carroll's got right field. Then in center, we probably had Alek Thomas slated in, postseason hero, best defensive center fielder in baseball. We signed Randall Grichuk to be the DH and the 4th outfielder. So it was like, where was Jake McCarthy going to fit? He was only going to get playing time as a lefty at bat against other lefties because they wanted Alek Thomas to have the better of the platoon splits. And Jake McCarthy ran it against left-handed pitching all season, dominated them. And now he's just dominating pitchers night after night, and he has become the D-backs go-to everyday player, and he's been fantastic for Arizona as Arizona continues to be fantastic in one-run games. 8-0 since the All-Star break in one-run games, 24-12 overall in the season. I believe that's the best record in Major League Baseball in one-run games. D-backs, another statement win. They've had them all season long. And I don't want to downplay the role that the other players had in that 9th inning. Corbin Carroll started it off with a clutch triple down the corner. Great ABs, of course, from Geraldo Perdomo to take a walk. The rookie, Adrian Del Castillo, to take a walk too, which set up the bases loaded opportunity for Jake McCarthy. Great at-bats by the young guys. And then also, Erod, I thought he was solid last night. I thought it was another encouraging start. Was he elite? But no, it was another start where it was like, yeah, if Jordan Montgomery did that, I think I would be happy. But for Erod, a guy who hasn't pitched all season, second start after the injured list, I'm encouraged with what I'm seeing. And I think as the season progresses, Erod does have a chance to become a very, very good pitcher for the D-backs and the perfect kind of number 4 starter in a postseason setting. So I really like the way Erod's trending. He ran into a little bit of trouble in the second and third inning, but settled down after that, retired the final 7 batters he faced, didn't really give up any hard contact last night. So really impressed by him overall. The bullpen was also perfect last night. We love to see that. Paul Sewald, I think he's perfect in more of those, in the non-closer role. I actually really like Paul Sewald. His guy's ERA back down to 3.69. All of a sudden, you actually look at the D-backs bullpen and some of the numbers. They're pretty good for these relievers. I mean, you got Seawald 369, Ginkle 292, Martinez 189, Ryan Thompson 222, Joe Mantiply 3.6. And then let me see, who else do we got? Where is my AJ Puck? 1.35 ERA. Dylan Floro is really the only guy who seems to be struggling, out the bullpen for the D-backs, but everyone else has been fantastic for the D-backs in the second half of the season, and potentially we'll see the debut of another good reliever with Ryan Nelson coming out the bullpen now with Jordan Montgomery staying in the rotation. I'm curious to see if we'll see Ryan Nelson in the game today with Monty pitching, because the D-backs are now looking for the series sweep, which would be perfect. And to do that, they're going to need good Jordan Montgomery, who's the only weak link right now in the rotation. So we'll see if he can step up in a big way. And speaking of rotations, I actually want to power rank the best rotations in the National League now that the D-backs are fully healthy, and the toughest that the D-backs might face in the postseason. So we'll power rank the rotations in segment number 2. Are you taking that dream vacation this summer but dreading the cost? With Ibotta, you get cash back on all your purchases, so you can spend more time making memories this summer and less time dreaming about them. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop, earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. You can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores. It's time you join the over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or Apple App Store, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. And also, if you're trying to stay hydrated this summer because we know about that Arizona heat, then I suggest you get yourself a little liquid IV, because when you're taking in America's pastime, don't forget to hydrate with liquid IVs. Popsicle firecracker flavor, a surefire summer hit. Get hydrated with electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients from the #1 powdered hydration brand in America, because baseball and summer go together like liquid IV and indulgent hydration. Tear, pour, live more. One stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Powered by LIV Hydroscience and an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients that turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. 3 times the electrolytes of a leading sports drink, 8 essential vitamins and nutrients, always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. No more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MLB at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. All right. Let's get back to the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. And now let's talk about the best rotations in the National League, because with the D-backs rotation now fully healthy, I want to do a little segment on the toughest rotations that the D-backs might face in the postseason. This is a personal power ranking. I already know you guys in the comments are going to blow me up, tell me I'm an idiot. That's fine. I have my own way of viewing things. I'm looking at the stats. I'm looking at the talent. I think the talent is what I look at overall. I think that's the most important thing to me. How scared would I be of your rotation in a postseason setting? And then also, I do care about the numbers that your guys are putting up. Like, there are some rotations where the numbers are good, but I look at the talent and I'm like, yeah, the numbers might be good, but I don't think you will actually do well in a postseason setting. So I know you guys are going to disagree with my little ranking here. I do not care. This is my personal ranking of who I think the toughest rotations to face in the National League postseason would be. And I'm only looking at NL contenders rotations. I have 9 teams down. These are all teams who are the division leader in the wild card race or within 3 games of a wild card spot. So teams who are like, the Cincinnati Reds, who are 4.5 games back. I'm not going to count them. I will count the Giants and Cardinals, who are 3.5 games back, because I already did the research on them. But starting from the Reds down, I will not be discussing them. So let's get into the power ranking. We're going to start from the bottom and work our way to number 1. At number 9, my rotation power ranking among NL contenders, I have the St. Louis Cardinals. And look, I like Sonny Gray. I think he's really good. He's having not as good of a season he had last year, but I still think he's a very good pitcher. So they do have one dude who I think is a stud, but the rest of the rotation, I just think is too old. I do not trust it all. And I just don't think they have really the strikeout ability or the overpowering ability that some of these other rotations have. They are 11th in ERA since June 29th, and I'm going to use June 29th as the qualifier for a lot of this stuff because, of course, that's our favorite date to use on the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. And I just look at the Cardinals rotation: Sonny Gray, Miles Mikolas, like Kyle Gibson. You'll probably have like Lance Lynn in there in the postseason. Like, it's fine. If this team made it to the postseason, it's fine. I just think it's way too old. I think they'll have trouble pitching deep into ball games, considering the age of the rotation that they have. And I just don't like it. 271 average allowed since the 29th as well. I just don't believe in the talent of that rotation. That's why I have them dead last in my ranking. Number 8, this is one of those controversial ones because number 8 in my ranking, I have the Milwaukee Brewers, who people might think is kind of crazy because you look at the numbers. Since the 29th, the Brewers are 4th in ERA. The numbers are very good on Milwaukee. The numbers tell you this is a very solid rotation, but I look at the names on paper, and that's why I have them at number 8. I just don't think this is a true postseason rotation. I like Freddie Peralta, but Colin Ray, Aaron Savali, Frankie Montes, like, I don't know. Like, are those guys good? Tobias Myers, he's young. He's having a good year. But I look at that rotation for the Brewers, and I just don't really believe in the upside of that rotation. I think it might have the lowest ceiling of any rotation in the National League, and that's one of the reasons I don't like it. The Brewers, to me, are the classic regular season team that's very good, but is not built for the postseason. They're kind of like the NBA version of like the Utah Jazz with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, where you could have really good regular season numbers, right? The Jazz were always like the best defensive team in basketball, solid offensive numbers as well, but then you get to a postseason setting, you're like, that team is, even though the numbers are good, they're not built for the postseason. And that's how I feel about the Brewers rotation. The numbers are good. The numbers are very good for the rotation. ERA, look at some of the other advanced stats, but when I just look at the names on paper, I am not a fan. That's why I got the Brewers at number 8. Number 7, how about the New York Mets? They are 5th in ERA since the 29th. That's why they have been so good, but they also have the 3rd highest walk rate during that time. When I look at the Mets rotation, to me, it's a low ceiling, but I do think it's a high floor rotation. They don't have any like elite studs. They don't really have like a Sonny Gray where it's like, okay, at least have a guy who is potential Cy Young candidate. Maybe not Sonny Gray this year, but we know Sonny Gray at his best could be a Cy Young level talent. And the Mets don't really have that. They just have a bunch of guys who are established veterans or maybe like above average starters, but no one elite. Jose Quintana, he's good. Luis Severino's good. Manai and David Peterson also have good seasons. Like, everyone is solid. If they had a Kodai Senga, it would be totally different. I think Senga is a stud. I think he has the talent to be a frontline starter. I was one of the guys in fantasy who held on to Senga all year, made one start. Now he's done for the rest of the season. The Mets rotation, I think, is solid. I look at the top 4, Quintana, Severino, Manai, Peterson. I don't think that's bad. I just don't think that rotation has a very high ceiling. And in the postseason, I wouldn't be scared of the Mets rotation. So to me, they're a high floor, low ceiling rotation, and that's perfectly fine. And then the last rotation I'll talk about before we get to segment number 2, number 6 in my power ranking. Sorry, Dodgers fans, but I have you at number 6. Maybe you guys think this is crazy, maybe not. Healthy, I think the Dodgers rotation could be nasty. But I'm not talking about healthy because this rotation has been hurt so much this season, and it's hard to bank on the health of the Dodgers rotation. If you tell me you got to the postseason and the Dodgers had Glasnow, Flaherty, Buehler, Yamamoto, like, yeah, that's a nasty run through 4. But the problem is Yamamoto coming back? If he does come back, how healthy will he be? How much ramp up time will he have? Walker Buehler, I mean, he's barely pitched like the last 2.5 years. How much do you really trust him? Jack Flaherty, he's having a great season, but he's been kind of mediocre the last couple of years. Do you really trust Jack Flaherty in a big postseason game? I don't know. Clayton Kershaw, he looks absolutely cooked. I like Landon Knack. I like Gavin Stone. I think both those pitchers are good. But as a D-backs fan, am I scared of those guys? No. Am I worried about Knack and Stone against some of the D-backs rotation starters? Am I scared of Stone and Knack going against the D-backs lineup? Absolutely not. I think Jack Flaherty is the biggest wild card in that rotation. If his regular season translates to the postseason, then they could be fine. But I still think they need either a Yamamoto or Walker Buehler to come back and pitch like studs for that Dodgers rotation to truly realize its potential. So right now, I have the Dodgers as the sixth best rotation in the National League, or I'll say the sixth scariest rotation in the National League. Maybe not the best, but in terms of teams that I fear in a postseason setting, I would have the Dodgers at number 6. Now we'll get into my top 5 scariest rotations in the National League in segment number 3. But hey, I first want to talk to you guys about eBay Motors, because passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make her the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And also, if you want to play America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, then I suggest getting Prize Picks, because Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right. Let's get back to the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Let me tell you my top 5 toughest rotations in the National League in a postseason setting. At number 5, I got the San Diego Padres. And again, maybe you guys think that's a little crazy, because since the 29th, the Padres have the best ERA in the National League at 3.61. So they have been pitching very good baseball recently. Joe Musgrove just came back, but he's part of the question mark that I have with the Padres. If you're telling me the Padres are going to have Cease, Musgrove, Darvish with the Waldrons and the Michael Kings, like, yeah, that's a very good rotation. But right now, Musgrove just came back from the injured list, and he has not been good this year. Then Darvish, it seems like it's still possible that he's going to come back and pitch for the Padres this year, but it sounds like it's also a big question mark. So if Darvish isn't out there and Joe Musgrove doesn't turn around his season, like, do I trust a rotation where the top 3 talents are Cease, Waldron, and Michael King in a postseason setting? Probably not. Yes, they are pitching well right now and look very good, but in the playoffs, I don't know if I trust the ceiling of that rotation if Darvish is not clicking on all cylinders, and if Joe Musgrove is not clicking on all cylinders. I don't know if that Padres rotation has the horses to go deep into the playoffs. And at that point, they've been pitching very well over the last few weeks. It's a reason why you look at the last 10 games, you say, oh, D-backs 9-1 their last 10. They must have started to pass the Padres and really close the gap with the Dodgers. Nope. Padres also 9-1 in their last 10 games. I think they've won 10 of their last 11 games overall. So their rotation has been pitching very well. I just don't think, if Darvish and Musgrove aren't there or not pitching to their potential, I just don't think their rotation is as good as some of these other teams in the National League. Number 4 in my power ranking, I got the Atlanta Braves. And look, They are ninth in ERA since the 29th, but I just think this rotation is way too talented, especially if this rotation is healthy entering the postseason. I just look at the top four: Chris Sale, Max Fried, Morton, and Ronaldo Lopez. Like, I just think that's a nasty top four. All four of those guys are really good. Chris Sale is back to being a stud. And if he can continue to pitch like this, because why wouldn't he? Like, that's a true number one ace who has done it before in the postseason, who's delivered a big World Series for the Red Sox back in 2018. So this is a guy who I would definitely be scared of in a postseason setting. Max Fried, I think, is a stud. And then Ronaldo Lopez has had a breakout season as well. Then Charlie Morton, he's the ageless wonder. Maybe he's still not having as good of a season as he typically does, but still 9 strikeouts per 9 innings for a guy that's 40. He still has put away ability. I think that rotation is talented. I think it has postseason experience. And overall, I think it's pretty scary. Second in strikeout percentage since the 29th. They can really put you away. And so I think the Braves are scary. They're a team to mess with. And I have them at number 4, despite, the lineup not pitching or the lineup probably not being as good as you want this year. I'm still fearful of that rotation in the playoffs. Number 3, I got the San Francisco Giants, who I do think have a legitimate case to be even higher than the D-backs, or maybe even be number 1 on this list, because the Giants make it into the playoffs. Right now, they're 3.5 games back. They make it into the playoffs. Their rotation could be very good. Logan Webb, Blake Snell, Robbie Ray, and Kyle Harrison is a pretty nice 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the postseason. That's legit options. That's a legit ceiling. Webb, maybe the most underrated starting pitcher in Major League Baseball after Merrill Kelly, of course. Blake Snell starting to put together in the second half of the season. Recently had that no-hitter. Robbie Ray is back for the Giants, former D-back. Then Kyle Harrison, the young guy. I think the Giants have a very good rotation, a lot of talent, second best ERA since the 29th. And I think they do have a legitimate claim to potentially having the best rotation in the National League. But again, just like, the Braves, like, the biggest issue with the Giants is the lineup. And at least the Braves lineup is still stacked. They're just having a bunch of guys having down years. The Giants lineup just isn't good enough, unfortunately. They already got rid of one piece in a Jorge Soler. I like the rest of the lineup. Like, who really scares you? Like, Heliot Ramos is having the best season among Giants. Tyler Fitzgerald, like, there's not really guys who scare me with the San Francisco Giants right now. That's why I think they probably won't make it to the postseason, despite having arguably the best rotation in the National League. Number 2, this is why I'm getting biased. I got the Arizona Diamondbacks. Zach Allen, Merrill Kelly, Brendan Pfaadt, and Erod just feels so strong to me. Gallen is a stud. Merrill Kelly's a proven stud. Brendan Pfaadt showed a lot last year as a rookie in the postseason, greatly improved this season. And then Erod as your number 4. I just think the D-backs have a better mix 1 through 4 than any other team I just named. I think they have a higher ceiling and a higher floor than pretty much anyone. Yes, the D-backs need a larger sample size of everyone being healthy and pitching to their potential. But if I actually put all these teams down on paper, I think the D-backs clearly are the second most talented rotation in the National League. Maybe not clearly, because I do think the Giants have a legitimate claim, and even potentially the Atlanta Braves. But I'm taking 1 through 4, the D-backs over the Giants rotation, just because guys like Pfaadt and Erod I like better than the Harrison and Robbie Rays. I like Pfaadt and Erod more than a Charlie Morton and a Lopez. So that's why I have the D-backs at number 2. Yes, we need to see a little bit more from a health and in a sample size perspective, but I think number 2 is perfect for this D-backs rotation. Then number 1, this again might be crazy because they are 10th in ERA since the 29th, but I have the Phillies as the number 1 rotation because there's not a rotation I think I'm more scared of than the Phillies with Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler, Sanchez, and Suarez. I think it's the best combination of guys who have postseason experience, or guys who can step up in high pressurized moments, guys with elite stuff, elite put away pitches. Like, I think that top 4 is nasty of guys that could throw hard, guys that you would be scared of in the playoffs. I think the Phillies, yes, they may not be pitching like the best rotation in the second half of the season, but if I was in the playoffs, the rotation that would scare me the most is the Philadelphia Phillies. So that's why I have them number 1 in my postseason rotation rankings. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Deuces.